Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Going to be continuing French Week with a Morane Saulnier 406 C-1. This is a kit produced by Frog in 1963. It's in 1/72nd scale, and it's kit number 157P. The P stood for plastic. The MS-406 was the most produced French fighter during World War II. Ultimately, a total of 1,176 were made. And it originated from a 1934 requirement from the French Arme de l'Air for a new C-1. And C-1 was a single-place fighter, so the C stood for chasse, which is their word for fighter plane. And so they were looking for the next step in the evolution of their fighters, replacing the D-Bottine D500, 510 series, which were first monoplanes, but with fixed gear, open cockpit. So they wanted something a little bit more modern. So they developed this MS-405, was the initial prototype. And it was the first low-wing monoplane with an enclosed cockpit and the first retractable gear produced by Morane Saulnier. And it also included a variable pitch propeller and flaps. It's made of mixed construction, with the rear half of the fuselage being fabric covered, and the rest of the aircraft being constructed out of a bonded metal wood sandwich called Plymax, and that skin was fixed over a duraluminum tubing, and there was some duraluminum around the engine cowling, but the rest of the aircraft was of that various mixed construction style. So kind of along the same lines as what you saw with the Hawker Hurricane around this same time frame too. This transition from the biplane era of fabric covered to the stress skin monoplanes. So this is that transition. It was originally fitted with an 860 horsepower Hispano-Suiza 12 YGRS with a two-bladed prop. Its first flight was in August of 1935. A second prototype was built with a 900 horsepower Hispano-Suiza engine. But that didn't fly until 20 of January 1937, so a year and a half between the two prototypes. It was able to achieve a speed of 275 miles an hour, which was acceptable at the time. And in March of 37, they ordered 16 pre-production aircraft. It was now called the MS-406 from some of the changes that had been made, including a retractable radiator as opposed to the fixed one, some changes in the wing structure in order to make it more stiff, and a few other minor changes resulted in the 406 as opposed to the 405. The first delivery of those pre-production aircraft was not until 3 of February of 38, with final delivery not until December of 38. So as with a lot of French aircraft in this pre-war era, the French aircraft industry was in disarray, constant restructuring, the government takeovers, rearranging of who was working with who, labor strikes, all kinds of stuff was going on. So the end result was, even though they were kind of coming up with some decent aircraft, it was just taking forever to get stuff into production. And by the time it finally got into production, now it was becoming obsolete, which is what happens with this aircraft. So the MS-406 was armed with a 20 millimeter Hispano-Suiza HS9 or the 404, through the cylinder banks on the engine, firing through the propeller hub. It was equipped with 60 rounds for that. It also had two 7.5 millimeter MAC or MAC 1934 machine guns, with one of those in each wing, with a total of 300 rounds per gun. And March 38, the full production order was made, ultimately totaling 1,000 aircraft. And then production started through the various nationalized French aircraft industry factories. The first production delivery didn't occur until 29 January of 1939. So, World War II is about to open up, and an aircraft that was designed in 1934 is just now getting into service. So by April, they were delivering 6 per day. By September, when the war started, they were delivering 11 per day, and 535 had been delivered. The final delivery of that 1,000 aircraft order was in March of 1940. During the Phony War, the MS-406 was the primary fighter aircraft, and it got into some skirmishes with some raiders that were coming across the border. The Germans were more focused on other areas rather than France. But there was a lot of reconnaissance going on, some fighter sweeps, probing, things like that during that Phony War. And during that time, the MS-406 has claimed 32 victories. Some of them, were BF-109s and 16 probables. Total losses during that time frame was 13 losses directly to air-to-air combat, but there was also 33 that were completely unknown what happened to them, and it's assumed that a lot of those may have been to aerial combat. So, it's a little less than 1-to-1, loss on that, and that's if you're assuming all those claims are accurate. So the French kind of got lulled into a sense of complacency with it because it was doing okay, but what they didn't realize is the BF-109s that were flying against were D models and B models. All the E's were in other fronts, and so they had kind of the second line guys, were covering the French frontier until the Germans were ready to mount their full onslaught in May. So they were kind of going up against the second string aircraft, and then once they the invasion in May of 1940 happened, then you got the A team coming in with BF-109 E1s, E3s, BF-110s, that were much superior to the MS-406, and the production standards on these aircraft was really low. They had a lot of problems with them, and so they never really even were able to achieve the 300 miles an hour that they were supposed to be making in the 406. They were lucky to get 260, 270 out of them, so they were flying at a distinct disadvantage. A lot of the problems, included the lack of armor on any of these aircraft. The guns would jam, inadequate firepower, 2 machine guns and the cannon just wasn't up to snuff anymore. Slow responsiveness of the guns, a lot of delay between pulling the trigger and the guns actually firing. Unreliable radios, high rate of engine wear, corrosion in the rudder components, glazing breaking under air pressure, loss of exterior panels due to deterioration of the screws that were holding them on. And none of these aircraft had rear view mirrors, surprisingly. So at the time of the German blitzkrieg through the Low Countries and into France on 10 May of 1940, there was a total of 10 group de chasse that were equipped with the MS-406. Ultimately suffered approximately 150 aircraft lost in direct air-to-air combat. And then there were 250 to 300 were lost in ground strafing, bombing attacks, and also the retreating French setting aircraft on fire and disabling them as they were retreating as the Germans were advancing through France. So you're talking about half of the forces that were left getting lost. So after the fall of France, when the Vichy Air Force, the Vichy French government was formed and was creating an air force, they only equipped one of the group de chasse after the fall of France. Some of them were still flying around in North Africa, in Syria, that some of them fought against the British for a little while, and a few of them actually went to the Free French side and fought on that side for a short while until those aircraft wore out. There was also a group of them that were down in French Indochina. In 4041, in French Indochina, the French were fighting against the Thai and the Japanese, and MS-406s were involved with that as well. So, it kind of ended its days. By 41, it was kind of done. As far as other users of the aircraft, China had ordered 12 in 1938. They were shipped to Haiphong, but those aircraft ended up being confiscated by the French government in exile in Thailand, and so they utilized those. So the Chinese possibly got one aircraft, but they were used by the French. Croatia received 48 through Germany, so Germany had captured quite a lot of these, and they were popular aircraft for training, and they gave them to some of the smaller states that needed some more modernized aircraft compared to what they had. So Croatia benefited from that with 48. Finland had ordered 76, and they were somewhat successful. It seems like everybody's hand-me-downs in Finland ended up being, very well utilized against the Soviets, particularly in the Winter War, and then also in following up on the Continuation War. So they had 76 of the MS-406, and then they ended up with 10 of the MS-410s, which were a slightly more powerful version. They got those. The Finnish also started their attempted to start their own production line on these. Made a few of those, and they also re-engined this, taking out the Hispano-Suiza engine and replacing it with a Klimov inline engine, which gave it a little bit more speed. So they ended up using some of these all the way into like 1944, with the last ones finally being retired in post-war, in like 47, 48 as trainers. So give it to the Finns, man. They can make the most with nothing. Germans, as I mentioned, you had captured a lot of them. They used quite a few of them in training. Same with the Italians. They got a few that were used for training. Poland had ordered 160, but none of them made it to Poland before Poland fell to the Germans. The Swiss got a couple from Morane Saulnier, and then they set up their own production line, and their aircraft was called the D-3801, or 3800 and 3801, depending on the engine. And they used those up through the 50s as well. In fact, almost all the surviving MS-406s are actually Swiss aircraft. Turkey got 45, 30 of which were from the Polish order. And then finally, Yugoslavia had ordered 25, but none were delivered because of the fall of France. So that's a little bit of a history on this aircraft. Kind of one of those, has-beens, almost ran, that it was part of the reason why, the French Air Force, did not do so well against the Germans at the beginning of the war. So let's look at the rest of the kit here. So we've got kind of an interesting box on here. It's a little hard to see on here. Maybe you can. This is like a metallic silver over on the side here, which is kind of neat. You got this nice 3-view color layout. A little blurb about the MS-406, including that there's over 40 parts. Size of the kit. It's part of their Blue Series, made in England, by the International Model Aircraft Limited, which is part of the Lions Corporation. Lions Group, I should say. And then it's making note of that it being molded in polystyrene, and hence the P in the 157 catalog number, emphasizing that this is a polystyrene kit, not one of their wood kits. On the side here, we've got profile for a couple of other kits that they make. Identify these aircraft from the Frog range. Looks like a Beaufort, and that looks like a FW-190. We covered that in a previous video. And on this side, we've got looks like a Hotspur, and I think that's a Miles trainer. So this one we'll be seeing in a future video. On this end here, we've got the little bit of information. Real faintly, you can see the Lions Brothers logo over here. And on this side, they're talking that you also get quality transfers, display stand, some movable parts, fully illustrated instructions. Nothing on the bottom. And we'll open it up. So we've got instructions. Let's see, this side here's got more history of the aircraft, some data, specifications, and a 3-view showing your paint scheme, some other models in the range, and how to assemble the stand. And then on this side here is your instructions. 8 steps, including the stand. And you've got a nice exploded view here with parts number callouts, which I don't think the actual kit has numbers on them. But fairly detailed for such an early kit. Looks like we've got positionable ailerons, rudder, elevators. So you have that. Then here we have our decals. And pretty simple, just the cockades and the fin flashes. No other markings. It does have specific aircraft number on here, number 107. So that was the 107th MS-406 to come off the production line. That was given the serial number for the Armadillo of N425. That would typically be in big giant letters across the bottom of the wings, kind of like buzz numbers. This aircraft was assigned to CG3/7, so the Groupe de Chasse, and it was assigned in April of 39 to the CG37, and it was accidented in September 17th, 39. So this aircraft was written off and really was done before the war really got going. So that's specifics of that. Was not able to find any photographs of that aircraft, so we'll just skip that part now. We'll take a look at our fuselage here. So we've got fairly fine molding or raised panel lining on here. It's used also to represent the fabric covering on the rear, and fit is not the best in the world. Got some flash on here, kind of soft on the details. Your radiator's just a blob on the bottom. Your exhaust, again, just little blobs, intakes. So fairly simple in its representation. And of course, it's typical, nothing inside. And this tree here has our upper wings, which have similar surface detailing, some flashing on it. So considering this is the first issue of the kit, surprising to see that much flash on it still. But not much for detail on there. Here's some of our little detail parts, including our ailerons, which have no detail on it. Here's our tail surfaces. Pilot seat, various antennas, guns, gun sights, and there's our pilot. Not the best looking pilot, but it's better than just a straight blob. And then this tree has the lower wings. Again, similar raised panel lining on there. Got the lump here for the Mac machine gun. It's our rudder, or I'm sorry, our elevator. Little bits on here. Propeller hub, separate from the propeller, which is nice. There's an upper wing piece, or lower wing piece, I should say. No detail in the engine well, or the wheel well, I should say. Here's our glass canopy, single piece. It has raised, yeah, it does have some raised panels or framing. Very simple, pretty thin, which is nice compared to, say, Airfix kits of this era, which had really thick canopies. That's a pretty decent canopy for this era for sure. And a few other little loose bits, rudder, a little bit of raised lines on there for fabric representation. Here's our gear doors. They're pretty simplified. Oops. And a couple other bits and bobs here. We've got a cockpit floor. And looks like we got the bottom of the stand. This seems to be missing the actual stand itself, unless it was... No, it seems to be gone. So there we got, the Lions Brothers logo there for Frog. And yep, that's it. The vertical part of the stand's missing. So there you have it. Fairly simple kit. Some niceties of it. Some parts are really simplified. But at the time, this is probably, I think, the only MS-406 kit available. So leave it to Frog to come up with kits of some unusual subjects. And then as far as other offerings, the Frog, the 63 one, was also issued in 63 under the Triang boxing, which, as you can probably guess, that was for the French market, as this would probably be a little offensive to the French. So they boxed it under the Triang logo. There was a 64 issue for the U.S. market under the Airlines boxing. That came with new artwork, which was then adopted by Frog for some of their next boxings in 65, 66. They used that Airlines artwork for their reissues. 68, there was a Frog bagged version. And then that was it until Frog folded up, and this mold ended up with Novo. So 77, Novo did a release, and then the mold ended up with Oganek, that Russian company that we've talked about before. So they've got a few issues of that in 78, 81, 85, just really cheap looking boxes. And then an even cheaper boxes came out of Factory Odessa Toy. They had 3 different versions of their boxings in 87 with slightly different artworks on those. And then a final boxing in 89. And then the molds ended up with Maquette in Russia. They did an issue in 99. And they did an interesting one in 2002. They created a different fuselage, so you could do the finished version with the swapped out engine, some more streamlined nose. So that was kind of different. And then those same 2 boxings were also done by another Russian firm called MSD. And then it ended up with Eastern Express in 03. And finally, as late as 2022, Southfront has reissued this kit again. So as with a lot of these Frog kits, these things get around and have gotten tons of reissues. While this isn't one of the highest number ones, this is definitely on the more common amount of issues that Frog molds are experiencing. So there's probably a lot of opportunity for you to get this if you're interested in making yourself a 406. Well, that's about it on this one. If you have built this kit, tell us about it in the comment section. If you got one sitting on your shelf, take a picture of it, send it in so we can share it with our next viewer build video. And as always, thanks for watching, and have yourself a great rest of your day.